This shows an assortment of tools you need on an installation on a job. Now let's take a look at the primary tools. One of the items you're going to need is a level to ensure that your wall bracket is hanging level on the wall for the wall mount units. And you're also going to need a good flaring block. You're also going to need a flaring size gauge. You'll need a good tubing cutter and a good deburring tool. You're also going to need a vacuum pump. You'll also need a good digital refrigerant scale. Next, you'll need a good set of torque wrenches. You'll need a dedicated set of refrigerant manifold gauges. You'll need a good nitrogen regulator, a Micron vacuum pump gauge. You'll need a bottle of nitrogen and R410A refrigerant. When you're unpackaging your outdoor unit in a multi-port series, you get an installation manual in the box, and you'll get this package, which is a set of bushings for bushing down your refrigerant piping. Make sure not to throw these away. There's also a set of drain plugs. One particular thing to note in the kit that comes with the multi-ports for your drain line, one of these is a drain connection. The other two are plugs. You need to make sure you install those so you can get the water out of the bottom of the condensing unit when it comes out of defrost. To access your piping and your wiring connections on your multi-port unit, you have a number of screws that you're going to need to take out of the end panel. Now that we've taken the panel off to open up access for your valves and your electrical, we're going to take the electrical panel off here with these two screws. When you're hooking electrical connections up to your multi-port, you've got your power coming in, you've got L1 and 2 and your ground in the top right hand of the unit. One particular thing to note on a multi-port unit, your power terminals are labeled A, B, and C, which also correspond with A, B, and C in your piping. Your wiring and your piping need to match. One thing to note on your multi-ports, you're going to have 4 conductors. Your power is going to be on 1 and 2. 3 is your communication line and 4 is your ground. You need to ensure that you don't have any breaks in your number 3 communication wire and your ground, or you will get some error codes, communication errors. The next phase of your installation process is preparing your piping. You'll need to measure the distance between your outdoor unit and your indoor unit, and you'll have to insulate both pieces of copper. Make sure you keep the cap on your refrigerant lines. You don't want talc powder or pieces of insulation getting into your system. One of the critical things to think about after you cut your tubing is making sure you deburr the copper properly, so you'll have a good fit on the flare and make sure you don't have any pieces in the copper piping. One of the things always to remember before you start your flaring is to put the flare nut on the copper. Once you get your piping into your flaring block, you're going to use your flare size gauge to set the depth of the copper in the flaring block. So now you're going to create your flare with an approved offset flaring block with a clutch, so you won't over tighten the flare. But it's recommended you tighten and untighten it twice to make sure you have a good smooth flare. Once you have your flare created, you want to make sure you have the right size flare for the R410A. So you want to make sure it's not going completely through your flare size gauge, as if it's a proper flare, it's going to stop halfway through the gauge. Before proceeding, you want to take a little bit of oil and put it on the back side of the flare and a little on the face of the flare to ensure a good seat. You want to take care not to get any inside of your piping. So when it's time to connect your piping to your multi-port unit, make sure you've got a good straight fit on your pipe and tighten up your flare nut. Daikin recommends a certain torque setting when tightening up your flare nuts. We recommend always using a backup wrench to hold it so you're not tightening on the valves. If you're purchasing the adjustable torque wrenches from Daikin, we'll give you a chart that tells you the foot-pounds per torque based on the copper size that you need for your equipment. With this one, you'll back the nut and the handle off. You'll be able to adjust the handle to the foot-pounds you need and then tighten the nut back up and you'll be good to go. One thing to note, if you're not using all of the ports on your multi-port, leave the copper insert in the flare nut. In a multi-split system, you have multiple indoor units available to you in styles. One is a ducted unit. One of the key things to consider when using one of the ducted units is service access. Most everything is accessible from the bottom with the exception of your control board, which is behind this one panel. 2 screws removes it and slides out of your way so you have access. So you have to make sure you have enough service access to get into this board. On your ducted unit, it comes with the return standard in the back, but it is configurable that you can remove the plate on the bottom and switch it to the back of the unit and make it a bottom return, and your filter will automatically fit on the bottom of the unit as well. All of the ducted units come with a 5-foot cable with a wireless receiver for communication through your wireless remote. One other key note on your ducted unit, they come standard with the mounting brackets on the side for hanging with all thread in whatever space it may be residing. Your multi-split system will arrive in multiple boxes. Your wall mount unit will be in the rectangular box. Now let's look at unpacking those. To start the removal of the case on your unit, you'll have to open your front flap and remove the screws. You'll need to retain these screws when you reinstall the cover. Depending on the capacity of the unit, you may not only have screws here holding the case in, but you may also have some under the louvers. You'll have to remove these as well. Once you've got the screws removed from the cover, you'll close the flap back and need to position it so you can release the latches in the back of the cover. Once you've released the clips in the back, you'll need to roll the unit onto its back and roll the cover off. Take care in not damaging the louvers as you remove the cover. Once you remove the cover, you'll have to turn the unit back over face down so you can take the retaining screw that holds on the bracket for the mounting. Once you remove the retaining screw, you'll have to release the clips on the back of the unit, holding the bracket in place. When securing the mounting plate to the wall, make sure the wall will support the weight of the unit, and for your convenience, we have multiple mounting holes available to you for mounting the plate to the wall. When you're ready to place your wall bracket on your wall for mounting your indoor unit, pay close attention. There are 2 tabs on here for putting your torpedo level on so you can make sure you're leveling it properly on the wall. Once you get it leveled, you can take a pen or a pencil and mark some holes where you're going to put your mounting. So make sure you're using an appropriate anchor for holding your bracket on the wall. It's important to anchor this on the edges so it doesn't fold in or roll in away from the wall, so it'll stay flat on the wall. One thing to note, you see the knockouts on the side so you can take your refrigerant piping out the corners. When you're doing your holes for your drain, you want to make sure you're angling your hole downward so the water's flowing away from the unit. One thing to pay attention to when you're hanging your unit on the bracket, make sure you're lining it up with the top and clipping it into the spots on the bottom. When hanging it on the bracket, you need to make sure when you push it toward the wall that it snaps into place on both sides. Your next step in your indoor unit installation is putting your wiring in. The wiring terminals are hidden behind this cover with 1 screw. And as within your outdoor unit, you've got 4 connections in here. Your power on 1 and 2, 3 is your communication line, and 4 is your ground. On the multi-port units, you have to ensure that your wiring from your outdoor unit is matching corresponding here and it's going to the correct piping setup on the outdoor unit. Once you've decided how you're piping your condensate out of your indoor unit, you need to take and put a little bit of water in the drain pan so you can make sure you don't have any leaks in your water line. One thing to note when you're getting ready to install your wall mount and the location of it, you have multiple knockouts where you can bring the refrigerant piping and your condensate lines out of the indoor unit. When you're ready to install the cover back on the indoor unit, make sure you roll it back on like you did when you took it off so it's not interfering with the louvers on the bottom of the unit. One final step when you get the cover back on the indoor unit is make sure you replace the screws that you took out of it that were securing it to the indoor unit. Then cover it up and start your operation. So now once you've got your wiring, your piping done, and units installed and ready to go, now it's time to turn it on and enjoy.
By following the instructions in this video and referring to your instruction manual for specific details, you are now ready to install a Daikin split system. If you would like to learn more about Daikin single and multi-split systems, gain a better understanding of how to install, commission, service, and troubleshoot Daikin equipment, please visit us at www.daikinuniversity.com